My name is Keisha, and I'm a 47-year-old woman from a small town in Tennessee, United States. 3 years ago, I died and met Jesus face to face when he revealed to me the shocking truth about white people. He literally showed me 9 things, 9 specific things, that he loves about white people. And I promise you, by the time you reach number 7 and number 8, you're going to understand how special and how deeply Jesus sees and values you. Let me start from the beginning. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon in March. I was driving home from work, taking the same route I had taken for 15 years. A truck ran a red light and hit the driver's side of my car at full speed. I don't remember the impact. I don't remember anything after seeing the headlights come toward me. Suddenly, I found myself standing in a different place. Not walking there, not arriving, just standing. And there was a presence in front of me that I can only describe as the most real thing I have ever encountered. More real than anything in my entire life. It was Jesus. I knew it the moment I was aware of him. Not because of how he looked, but because of what came off of him. It was like truth and love existing as one single force. He looked at me and said, "Keisha, I want to show you something." Many of my people who are white feel deeply misunderstood right now. They feel blamed for things they never personally did. They feel like the world is shifting under their feet and they don't know where they fit anymore. And I see that. I see their hearts. And I want them to know what I love when I see them walking faithfully with me. He didn't ease into it. The first thing he said was, "I love the ones who stay faithful even when they feel out of place." And then he showed me people. A man sitting in a church pew, praying quietly. A woman at her kitchen table, reading her Bible before her family woke up. An older man at work, staying quiet when conversations turned in directions that made him uncomfortable because he didn't know how to speak up without being attacked. A younger woman in her 30s who had started a new job at a marketing firm and felt completely out of step with the values being pushed in her workplace. Jesus watched them and he said to me, "These people feel like strangers in the world they grew up in. The values they were raised with, they're being mocked now. The things they believe, they feel pressure to hide them. Men are being told their masculinity is inherently wrong. Women are being told their choices as mothers and wives are backwards. Yet they are still here, still holding on." He paused. And then he said something that I've thought about every single day since I came back. He said, "Faithfulness that costs you something is the only kind that means anything." I thought about John 15 verse 18 right then. If the world hates you, keep in mind that it hated me first. That's exactly what he was pointing to. These people aren't holding on because it's easy. They're holding on because they've decided Jesus is worth more than being liked. Whether they're men or women, young or old. And he said he loves that. He genuinely loves that. Then the scene shifted. He showed me a father, late 50s, sitting at a kitchen table with bills spread out in front of him. He had his head in his hands and he was praying, quietly, barely moving his lips, and he was scared. Scared about money, scared about whether he could take care of his family, scared about what inflation was doing to everything he had worked for his whole life. And then he showed me a mother, early 40s. She was standing in her kitchen at midnight, unable to sleep because she was worried about her son who had gotten into the wrong crowd, worried about her teenage daughter navigating a sexually explicit culture, worried about her husband's job security. Then he showed me a grandfather. He was lying in bed at night, not sleeping, praying for his grandchildren, worried about the world they were inheriting, worried about whether they would keep the faith, worried about whether he had done enough. And a grandmother in her 60s. She was at her kitchen table with a cup of coffee getting cold, interceding for her adult children and their spouses and their kids, praying over each one by name. Jesus said to me, "I love when they bring these things to me, when they don't try to carry it alone." He said, "So many of my people carrying burdens that were never meant to be carried alone. The weight they feel, financial pressure, fear for their children, uncertainty about the future. I did not design them to walk under that weight without me. But when they come to me with it, when they actually lay it down, something happens. My strength meets them exactly where their strength runs out." He referenced Matthew 11 verse 28. "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." He said, That is not a poetic phrase. That is a literal invitation. And I love the ones who actually take me up on it. He told me there were men watching their retirement savings shrink and still choosing to tithe. Women who didn't know how they were going to pay for their children's college education and still woke up every morning and prayed. Men working jobs they didn't love because they were committed to providing for their families. Women managing household budgets with less than they'd ever had and still being generous. He said he sees every single one of them. And he said he is not far from any of them. He said, "Now I want to show you something harder." And he showed me people who had been hurt. Real wounds. A woman whose husband had left her for someone else after 20 years of marriage. A man whose kids hadn't spoken to him in years because of choices he made. A woman who had been hurt by a pastor she trusted. A man who had been rejected by his church community. People who had been hurt by their families. Hurt by communities they thought would be there for them. Hurt by people they loved. And some of them had become bitter. Jesus didn't say that lightly. He didn't skip over it. He looked at those people with this expression I can only describe as grief mixed with urgency. Like a doctor who sees a patient getting sicker and the patient doesn't realize it. He said to me, "Bitterness is one of the most dangerous places a soul can live. Because it feels justified. That's what makes it so dangerous. The wound was real. The pain was real. But the bitterness is a cage. And the person inside the cage is the one who suffers most." He then showed me others. A man who had been through a brutal divorce and chose to forgive his ex-wife, not because she deserved it, but because he refused to let her choices poison the rest of his life. A woman who had been deeply hurt by her church and chose to forgive the pastor and the people involved, and even continued to attend, not pretending it didn't happen, but refusing to let it kill her faith. He showed me a man whose father had abandoned the family, who had every reason to hate men and God both, and who had chosen instead to break that cycle with his own children. He showed me a woman who had been betrayed by her best friend and chose reconciliation instead of revenge. Jesus said, that man's act of forgiveness was one of the most powerful spiritual acts I witnessed in his entire life. That woman's choice to seek reconciliation instead of burn bridges, the world didn't see it. Their churches barely noticed it. But I saw it. And I loved it. He quoted Hebrews 12 verse 15 to me. "See to it that no one falls short of the grace of God, and that no bitter root grows up to cause trouble and defile many." He said, bitterness spreads. It doesn't stay contained. It gets into families. It gets into churches. It gets into how people see the world. I love the ones who stop it. Then he got quiet for a moment, and I knew something more personal was coming. He said, "I want to show you what it looks like when my people fight what they're not supposed to want." And he showed me hidden things. Things people carry privately. A man in his 40s who struggled with pornography and hated himself for it, but kept coming back to God and repenting, genuinely, not just going through motions. A woman in her 30s who struggled with drinking more than she should, who had been through treatment twice and kept fighting to stay sober. A man whose pride kept destroying his closest relationships, and he knew it, and he kept fighting it. A woman whose jealousy and comparison issues were poisoning her relationships with other women, and she was in her prayer time every day asking God to change her heart. He showed me a middle-aged man whose lust had nearly destroyed his marriage, and who had taken drastic measures to stay pure, blocking websites, accountability partners, radical honesty with his wife. He showed me a woman struggling with greed and materialism, constantly having to choose generosity over consumption. Jesus didn't look at these people with disgust. He didn't look at them with disappointment the way I expected. He looked at them with something that felt like fierce affection. Like a coach watching someone in a hard fight and believing in them. He said, "I am not moved by people who make it look easy. I am not impressed by people who don't struggle. I am moved by people who keep getting back up." He said, "The man who falls 7 times and returns to me 7 times. That man's faith is worth more to me than the faith of someone who has never been tested. The woman who wants to do better, who keeps trying, who refuses to accept defeat, that is spiritual strength. I see the ones who don't quit on me even when they keep failing. And I love that. That is not weakness. That is the most stubborn kind of faith." Proverbs 24 verse 16. For For though the righteous fall 7 times, they rise again. That verse came alive in a completely different way standing there with him. He said, "Now let me show you something that breaks my heart, and what I love when I see people fight against it." He showed me families. Christian families. Fathers and mothers who had raised their kids in the church, prayed over them, tried to do everything right. And they were watching their adult children walk away from faith. Questioning everything. In some cases, rejecting it entirely. I watched a mother on her knees, crying, praying for her son who had told her he didn't believe anymore. I watched a father who was so burdened for his daughter that he had started writing letters to her, tucking Bible verses into cards, because it was the only way he could think of to still reach her. I watched a grandmother who had started writing Bible devotionals specifically for her grandchildren, hoping they would read them someday. I watched a grandfather who was losing his faith struggle, but who every Sunday still brought his grandkids to church, still prayed at the dinner table, still modeled faith even when he was uncertain. Jesus watched them and said, "I love these people. I love their faithfulness in the face of what feels like failure, because they don't see what I see. They don't see the seed still working underground. They don't see what I am doing even in the silence." He told me that every prayer a parent or grandparent prays over a child, every single one, is recorded. Not metaphorically, actually recorded. He said, "Not one prayer spoken over family and faith is forgotten by me. Not one." The father praying in his car on the way to work for his kids. The mother interceded at midnight. The grandparent who has been faithful for 60 years. Every single prayer. I hear them all. I remember them all. He quoted Joshua 24 verse 15. "As for me and my household, we will serve the Lord." And he said, "I love the homes where that decision is being made over and over again, even when it feels like no one else in the house is choosing it alongside them. The husband is standing alone. The wife is praying alone. The grandparents interceded alone. I love their faithfulness." Then he showed me something different. Something I wasn't expecting. He showed me people who had been blessed. Good jobs, comfortable homes, healthy families, decent savings. A man who had built a successful business. A woman who had climbed the corporate ladder. People who had worked hard and it had paid off. And he said something that surprised me. He said, "Comfort is one of the quietest dangers I watch for. Not money itself. Not success itself. But what comfort does to dependence on him." He showed me 2 men side by side. Both were Christians. Both were materially comfortable. One of them had slowly, gradually let their need for God shrink because life was going well. They still believed. They still went to church. But their prayers had gotten shorter. Their urgency had faded. God had become a background presence instead of a living relationship. He was successful but spiritually stagnant. The other man had similar blessings and responded the opposite way. More gratitude. More generosity. More awareness that it could all be gone tomorrow. More hunger for God despite having everything he wanted materially. Then he showed me 2 women. One had money and comfort, and it had made her proud. She thought her success was because of her intelligence and hard work, which was partly true, but she had completely forgotten that every ability she had was a gift from God. The other woman had the same blessings but held them with open hands. She was more generous, more grateful, more aware that it could all change in an instant. Jesus said, "I love the ones who stay humble when they have every reason to become proud. I love the ones who receive blessings and let those blessings increase their trust in me, not replace it. Whether they are men or women, young or old. The person who has much and remembers that it all comes from me, that person's heart stays right with me." He quoted Deuteronomy 8 verses 17 to 18. "You may say to yourself, 'My power and the strength of my hands produced this wealth for me.' But remember the Lord your God, for it is He who gives you the ability to produce wealth." Gratitude is not just a nice feeling. Gratitude is a form of spiritual protection. It keeps the heart from drifting. I watch the people who have been given much and who respond with thankfulness instead of pride. I love that. He said, "I want to show you something that makes heaven pay attention." And he showed me ordinary acts of service. A man spending his Saturday helping an elderly neighbor repair a fence. A woman bringing meals to a family in her church who had gone through a medical crisis. A couple who had quietly, for years, been donating a portion of their income to a ministry they believed in, without telling anyone. He showed me a man who coached his daughter's soccer team not for recognition but because he wanted to be a godly influence on those kids. A woman who volunteered in the prison ministry every Tuesday, visiting inmates that nobody else visited. A man who worked in a coal mine and shared his faith with the other miners every single day without preaching at them. He showed me a woman who worked from home and had started a prayer group for stay-at-home moms. A man who used his carpentry skills to help build homes for families in need. A woman who worked as a nurse and prayed over every patient she touched, seeing Christ in them. None of these were famous. None of them had large platforms. The world had not noticed any of them. Most of them had never been recognized publicly for what they did. Jesus said, heaven noticed every single one. Every act of service. Every humble gesture. Every time someone chose to serve instead of be served. Every time someone used what they had to help someone else. He said something that I keep coming back to. The people who do the most visible work for me on earth are not always the ones doing the most significant work. The quiet ones, the ones who serve without needing to be seen, they are doing some of the most important work in my kingdom. The father who teaches his son to be a man of integrity. The mother who raises her children to love God. The man who works hard at his job and does it with excellence as unto me. The woman who serves others without needing credit. These are the ones who are changing the world. He quoted Matthew 25 verse 40. Whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. And he said, I mean that exactly as I said it. Exactly as I said it. When my people serve others, truly serve them, without agenda, they are serving me. And I do not forget it. The act that no one saw, I saw it. The prayer offered in secret, I heard it. The kindness extended without expectation of return, I remember it. He showed me a man who had been serving in children's ministry for 15 years. He had never been recognized publicly, but Jesus pointed to him and said, he has invested in more lives than most people who stand on stages. Then he showed me a woman who worked as a teacher and had quietly become a spiritual mentor to hundreds of young people over her career. Jesus said, that woman's influence will echo for generations. By this point I had stopped trying to process everything in real time. I was just trying to take it in. He said, now I want to show you one of the biggest battles happening right now. And he showed me something I recognized immediately, because I had lived it. He showed me the noise. The constant, relentless noise. News channels. Social media. Political arguments. Cultural debates. Entertainment. Everyone screaming about who is right and who is wrong and what you're supposed to think and how you're supposed to feel. And he showed me believers trying to navigate all of it. Some were being slowly shaped by it without realizing it. Men were anxious about the future, about their ability to provide, about the world their children were inheriting. Women were anxious about the same things. Both men and women were being shaped by the culture's messages about what they should be, how they should look, what they should want. Their anxiety was rising. Their certainty was shrinking. They were absorbing fear and outrage and hopelessness every single day, and they were starting to look more like the culture around them than like people who believed the kingdom of God was real. Jesus said, I love the ones who choose my word over the noise. He said, it sounds simple, but it is one of the hardest things a person can do right now, because the noise is designed to be louder than anything else. The world is very good at making its voice seem more urgent than mine, and I watch men and women both being pulled in 1,000 directions at once. Romans 12 verse 2. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. He said, transformation happens at the level of the mind. What people put into their minds every day, that is shaping who they are becoming. And I love the ones who are intentional about letting my truth be louder than everything else. He said he watches people choose to turn off the news and open their Bible instead. He watches people choose to pray instead of scroll. He watches men who could be spending hours consuming content that poisons their minds instead choosing to spend that time with their families and their God. He watches women who could be caught in comparison and envy and instead choose contentment and gratitude. He said he sees every single one of those choices. And he said they matter far more than the people making them realize. The last thing he showed me, I think it was the most important one. He said, "Many of my people are losing hope. They are looking at the condition of the world and they are becoming afraid. They are afraid for their children. They are afraid for their grandchildren. They see what is happening in the culture, in the government, in the church, and they are starting to believe that things are only going to get worse and there's nothing they can do." He showed me people who had become overwhelmed, consuming too much bad news, carrying a grief for the world that had slowly turned into a kind of paralysis. Men who felt emasculated and uncertain. Women who felt like their role as mothers and wives was being attacked. Both feeling like their values were no longer welcome. And then he said something that I need you to hear clearly. He said, "Earth is not the end of the story. It was never supposed to be. The people who are most effective for my kingdom on earth are not the ones who have made earth their primary home. They are the ones who live here fully but hold on to it lightly. They are the ones who know deep in their bones that what they are working toward is something that cannot be taken away. The father who is faithful to his family and his God regardless of what the culture says. The mother who raises her children in the faith regardless of the opposition. The man who stands for truth even when truth is unpopular. The woman who chooses godliness even when the world tells her to choose herself." Philippians 3 verse 20. "But our citizenship is in heaven." Colossians 3 verse 2. "Set your minds on things above, not on earthly things." He said, "I love the ones who hold the tension, who are fully present in the world, fighting for what is right and good, but who are not shaken when the world doesn't go the way they hoped, because they know this world is not the final word." The man who is concerned about his country, but whose hope is not in any earthly government. The woman who loves her family fiercely but doesn't believe their ultimate destiny is determined by current circumstances. These are the people who are stable. These are the people who can actually impact the world around them. He looked at me and said, "Tell them. Tell them that the fear they feel about the future is real, and I don't dismiss it. Tell them that what I am building cannot be stopped. And every person who keeps walking faithfully, every prayer, every act of service, every moment of refusing to give up, those things are being woven into something they cannot fully see yet. The grandfather who prays, the grandmother who intercedes, the man who stays faithful in his job, the woman who raises her children well. All of it matters. All of it is building something." Before it was over, before I came back, he said one more thing. "Keisha, what I love is not skin color. What I love is hearts that trust me." And then he said, "But I see these people. I see the specific weight many white Christians are carrying right now, both the men and the women. The confusion about their place in a changing world. The men feeling like their role is being erased. The women feeling like their choices are being attacked. The guilt they sometimes feel for things that are not their fault. The fear of being misunderstood if they speak what they believe. The longing to stay faithful when faithfulness feels costly. I see all of it. And I want them to know, I have not looked away." He said, John 3 verse 16 is still true. Romans 10 verse 13 is still true. Whoever calls on my name will be saved. Whoever. That has never changed. That will never change. It does not matter what you look like or what gender you are or what era you live in. My love is the same. My faithfulness is the same. My kingdom is the same. And then it was over. I woke up in a hospital room 3 days later. When I woke up, my husband sat beside my bed and my daughter held my hand. They told me I had been unconscious and that many people had been praying. I kept what happened to myself for a time, but now I must share it. After what I saw, I know this is real. Jesus sees every act of faith. Parents praying for their children, people resisting temptation, choosing forgiveness, studying His Word, and standing for Him when it's difficult. He sees men and women building their lives on God's truth. Every sacrifice, every prayer, every step of obedience matters. He sees it all. If you are one of those people, I want you to know that what Jesus said about you was not distant or generic. It was specific. It was personal. He was looking at real men and women living real lives in a hard moment in history, and He was saying, I see them. I love what I see when they keep walking with me. Heaven is watching. And Jesus never forgets a single person who chooses to stay faithful when giving up would have been so much easier.